No, these are gonna die. Here, I mean, sometimes, but yeah, not yet. In the spring, we'll get some more, but I over the break, I guess it was, what was it? It was Christmas Day. We went to the White Mountains, and it was windy, so I was excited because I got to take my kite. Anyway, that's enough about my kite. Why don't we start over here, and we'll move this way somehow.
My name is Abdelaziz, but they call me Aziz. I'm from Saudi Arabia. I like sports, boats, cars, stuff like that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
My name is Kasim. I'm a flight instructor at the flight line. Been here for almost a year. Before that, I was a flight instructor on Phoenix, Giovanni Airport. This is my first semester, so.
Awesome. And I like the colors that you're wearing.
Thank you.
I'm a wildcat. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Maria. This is my second semester here.
You got to have something that's interesting about yourself.
I haven't taken basically I have 120 flight time. I haven't taken my certification yet for, if that's what you call it. I forgot about the flight time. Again? Yeah, the check ride, yeah. So tough for me. I haven't taken that one yet. I'm graduate from Daytona Beach, Embry-Riddle, Daytona Beach. I took unmanned aircraft system. I'm a U.S. Army vet.
Awesome.
I'm Drow. I went to the Daytona Beach campus.
Okay. One other thing. Oh, really? Wow. I guess that's, I don't know, different. That is, I think the beach is cool, but it's not like, I don't know, I like mountains, but my wife like really likes the beach, but she doesn't want to live near the beach. So
Yeah, it's just the same.
yeah.
Being at the beach gets.
I guess it's kind of like it's like a lot of things in life. If it's really close to you, you probably take it for granted, and it's like but then when you live far away from it, then it's really cool and exciting when you get to go to see whatever that is. But anyway.
My name is Mike Knott. First semester student here. I got my undergrad at University of Maryland, College Park. I've been out of school now for almost a decade, so it'll be interesting to get back into it.
Awesome. Dust off the cobwebs and just kidding. I'm sure you were plenty, engaged in your work for the last 10 years. So that's awesome.
My name is Patsika. I'm from Mongolia. I did my undergraduate in Russia in 1999. Right now, I'm 20 years in aviation. It's aviation medicine engineering. This is my last semester.
Awesome. It seems like you've been here. Have been here 2 years.
Yeah, almost.
It seems like it's flown by. Yeah.
I'm still struggling with my English, but I'm
Oh.
almost graduating.
Well, I mean, if I was in Mongolia, I would be struggling with, yeah. So that's awesome. And you guys will be headed back or,
Yeah.
okay. Awesome. Well, yeah, it's gone too fast. I mean, in some ways, I'm sure you're like, you're pumped to be out of here, but anyway, that's cool.
My name is Daniel. I am also a flight instructor at the flight line. An interesting fact about me is I'm actually part of the Pacific Islander,
Really?
which you couldn't tell by looking at me.
Is there like a specific? I'm not super familiar with all the
Hawaiian.
different Hawaiian. Okay, cool. It's awesome.
I'm Dwayne, also a Daytona grad, flight instructor, and interesting fact about me is I ride a motorcycle.
Okay. When I was like, I don't know, 21, I think I was determined to get a bullet bike, and my parents talked me out of that one. But too many stories of people turning into pancakes and stuff. But that's cool though. I mean, maybe someday.
I'm excited to get it back.
Well, I mean, I know the probabilities are low. It's just the probability is probably higher than if you're in a vehicle with 4 wheels. But anyway, that's cool. Someday maybe I'll experience that.
My name's Amber. I just finished my undergrad here at the Prescott campus. An interesting thing about me is I teach swim lessons.
Cool. Like what age ranges?
All of them.
All of them? Did you get any old people or?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
All of them.
My kids need swim lessons. So I have 4 kids. Anyway, they still need swim lessons, even the oldest. But anyway, maybe where do you work?
The wives here.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we'll see you in the summer or something.
My name is Christine Sue. My second semester here. I moved here from Alabama, and I have a 6-year-old son.
Awesome.
My name is April, and I came from Oregon. And I used to fly caravans up in Alaska.
Cool.
My name is Caitlin. I'm from California originally. This is my 4th year here. Just finished my undergrad. Originally aeronautical science. That changed last semester to aeronautics.
Cool. Awesome. Good to have you. Steve.
My name is Steve. This is my last semester.
Really? I didn't realize it was yours last either.
It's me, Jeff, and Boss.
Wow.
Semester. We have a lot of senioritis back here.
Yeah, I don't know how to deal with that. I remember being a senior.
Yeah.
And,
Interesting fact, last time I flew a kite was in 1999 on the beach in South Padre, Texas, and I dive bombed lots of children with it. So,
was it a power kite? Or it was a dual?
Kite is like the dual string with the dual handles with the 4 strings. And that was dangerous. I was brutally dangerous to small children. I was totally
Awesome. Okay, cool.
My name is Jeff. as you said, the semester here. So we're just gonna be cruising by.
Yeah, I can tell the back row is gonna be trouble.
I got 2 undergrad degrees, and interesting fact is, I think I'm part Scottish, you know.
Really? No, are you serious?
Yeah, I found out, somebody did a genealogy study of my family.
Like the 23andMe or
So even though
or
my background's Philippine and Spain, like, or my last name like traces back to like Scotland or something.
Wow. Oh, maybe you're, you should check and see if you're descended from William Wallace, Braveheart guy. But that's cool. I actually recently found out I'm descended from his brother, William Wallace's brother, who also got shoot, what's it called? Not deboweled, but you know, huh? I can't remember the term, but you know, really, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, he was right there with his brother, experienced the same things, but it wasn't the faith. Yeah. Apparently, he had some offspring that survived. Because anyway, but that's cool. I think it's fun to find out, like, you know, where your ancestry and stuff. I haven't done the 23andMe thing, but I think it would be interesting to look at. Awesome. Well, thank you for humoring me with that. Today we will probably get out early, although I feel kind of conflicted with that because a 3-hour Monday class in the spring semester really gets kind of gypped because we have Martin Luther King Day and we have President's Day. So, and spring break, yeah. Anyway, so I think it's 12 weeks that we will actually meet. But anyway, so I do, I kind of regret that this is a Monday class. But anyway, it is what it is. We'll make the best of it. I know 3 hours is long. And so I guess not because of that fact, but just because I like to incorporate it. There will be a lot of labs in this class. I say labs. They're not quite as in the field as they have been in the past. In the past times I've taught this class, it just logistically it gets hard to do that many quote unquote real world assessments. So we will be doing quite a bit that's not in this classroom, but we'll get out, we'll use some equipment, we'll actually do some assessments. And each assessment is kind of like a mini research project, I guess. But anyway, they're all labs. But with industrial hygiene, anytime you do an assessment and an analysis, it's kind of like a little mini tiny research project in itself. So you see me set up with the mic and stuff. When we are in here, I will be recording lecture. So you on YouTube, there will be, you know, you're gonna see about 20 or 30 minutes of just my screen on YouTube if you watch this one. It is live streamed, but it is private. just be aware that you know, audio is gonna go onto YouTube for the class. It's mostly for your convenience, so that if you miss a class, then you can go back and listen to it. So like I said, you can just listen to a lecture portion anytime you want. You know, it usually takes me a few days to do any editing or tweaking and then get it up on the playlist. The lab portions, though, you won't be able to just, you know, go onto YouTube and make up. And so we will establish teams for the semester. Now, you won't be submitting any work as a team. but the team is there to help facilitate your own learning, to facilitate the exercises, so you can work together and you will work together and collaborate on things, but what you submit in terms of your assignments will be your own work, if that makes sense. So I'm fine with you sharing ideas, working together on things. I want that, but I want your writing to be your own writing. And the same with the tests that we'll have. So let me go ahead and pull up the syllabus. I don't think I have controls over here. I used to always teach in this room, and now it's been like a year since I've taught in this room. We'll zoom in on that a little bit. So like, we'll meet Mondays in this room. There will be times when we go over to RASC 2 for the lab portions or to learn how to use equipment. My office hours, well, a couple of things actually. Interesting. So I use the template that the college provides. They want everything standardized, but they don't have a spot for my office number. Just realizing that. So my office is in AC1. That didn't used to be the case, in room 206. So I am open to meeting in RASC 2 or down here somewhere with you if that's inconvenient. Just let me know ahead of time and I'll come on down. Plus on Mondays, I'll be down here anyway. So like after class, it's not officially part of my office hours, but if you need to meet, let me know. As long as I'm available, we'll find a spot to go meet. But otherwise, my office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 3, and then Wednesdays from 10 to 1. I do have my cell phone on here in case of whatever. Don't use it when you take random surveys online, but otherwise, feel free to contact me if there's something urgent. And some of you I know commute quite a ways to be here. If there's an accident on I-17 or whatever, and for whatever reason you need to let me know that you're not going to be here, then feel free to text me or call or whatever. My email. I'll let you read in your own time the course description and goals, but I do want to talk about them briefly. You could also call this class occupational and environmental health, basically. So its focus is on the health side. Often safety and health are combined for practical purposes in industry. So if now I'm thinking of the occupational safety side, but I think you may be able to say the same things of aviation safety. Not totally sure, but often you'll see titles that are EHS, ESH, HSE, like every SHE, every combination of those 3 letters, they'll combine safety, health, and environmental all together because they are fairly related. But it kind of just depends on the organization. Sometimes they'll be broken apart into their specialization. Sometimes, especially in the smaller organizations, you might see environmental, health, safety, loss control, security, any type of risk management. All of that is the same person. The same person does all. And sometimes they even include human resources. So one person does all of that stuff. Anyway, so this is the H&E part of that acronym, the health and environmental. And to be honest, if you are to evaluate those exposures, health exposures, whether you're talking about occupational or environmental, the the methods, the equipment are often the same. It just depends on the environment that you're in. So actually, industrial hygiene is sometimes considered an environmental health. It happens to be that the environment is inside the workplace, in the industry, and environmental health refers to everything outside of the industry. So like, for example, an example of environmental health with airports, well, does anyone have any guesses on environmental health issues related to airports? Sorry?
The noise.
Noise, good. That's one of the big ones. Noise pollution. Any others? Okay. So you may have some airborne, yes, some airborne or ground source
White light.
contaminants. Okay. Now that's probably more aviation safety. When I say environmental health, I'm referring to often it's the community, really, like with an airport, the community surrounding, and it's the human health. So environmental sciences focuses on the health of the environment. We're interested in, at least in this field, in implications for human health. It's kind of I don't know. They're similar, but they're also different. But along with just learning about those two fields, there are two ways that I want you to grow. And so these are the ways that you'll be assessed in this class. One is writing, your technical writing skills. So for each of the labs we have, there will be a lab report. And then also your quantitative, so your math skills and problem solving skills. So the way that you will be assessed in those two ways are, we'll come back to the resources and materials. You'll have reading quizzes and lab reports. Pay attention to the weighting here. So the reading quizzes are not weighted very much at all. Each of those will be 5 questions regarding case studies that you can find in the modules on Canvas. They're basically a primer for class. There are also, some of them have a math question at the end. So that will be regarding material that we may have covered in a previous class. So mostly reading, and the case studies are structured similarly to the way I would like your lab reports. Now, not exactly. They're NIOSH case studies, and they go into a lot more detail and a lot more depth than I want you to focus on. So you'll see when you look at the reading quizzes as you open those up, I don't want you to read the whole document. So don't. I've had students who are very thorough, and they'll open it up and they'll read the whole thing. Don't want you to do that. I want you to open up the quiz, see what the question is, then refer to, so think of it more of as reference material. So refer to the case study. You will have to do some reading that may not be specific to the question, just to familiarize yourself with the case. Sorry, the context, the background, figure out what they're doing, what they did. It's kind of a story, so you're getting familiar with the story, and then figure out what the answers are to the questions. And for the reading quizzes, it's mostly, when I look at your answers, I just want to know, did you read the case study and you have some sort of understanding of what was going on? That's what I want to know. And so I'm not going to read your answer word for word. That's what I'm going to look for. It's kind of a yes or no, you did it, and looks like you understood kind of what was going on, or not. Lab reports have a detailed rubric. So I break down, not line for line exactly, but I have bullet points with everything that I want to be in each section. So they're very structured. You will need to be a little adaptable in what goes in each part of the lab report. So for example, some labs will be assessing health exposures, but others will be evaluating ventilation, for example. And you have to adapt the rubric a little bit to that. So if I talk about like an occupational exposure limit in an exposure lab report, well, it's not really an exposure limit for a ventilation lab, but I do need to talk about whatever standard there is for our assessment for whatever we happen to be measuring. And we'll talk about that with each one. 2 to 3 pages. I mean, I have it down here. The actual text could be 1 to 2 pages. I prefer quality over quantity. It doesn't have to be super wordy, but and if you go to industry, if you're a consultant or if you are writing a report for, say, your manager, a mid or upper manager, they don't want 50 pages, 100 pages. Really what they want is like a green light, red light. Are we good to go? And if not, what do we need to do basically to get there? So I want you to focus on keeping them like a consulting technical report. Short and to the point. You will have some figures and stuff, and so that will push it. If you go over 3 pages, I don't really care. I just want to get the point across that it doesn't have to have a bunch of fluff. Get to the point and tell me what's going on. There will be 3 exams, so you can see those will account for 35% of your grade. They will be largely math-based, nothing too complex. Largely algebra. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything that's not algebra. And I mean, it's at least 95% algebra. And it's nothing crazy. We will go over the math. I will also have practice problems for you to work on outside of class in preparation for the exams. And they will be on the computer. So there will be a small window of time when you can take the exam. It will be timed. And in 603 last semester, I tried the lockdown browser for the first time, and I didn't like it. So some of you had to go through that. But two issues I have with the lockdown browser. One, their site went down like on the last day the exam was open, and it wasn't worth. Some students couldn't get in because of that. That was issue number 1. And issue number 2 is it still doesn't prevent you from referencing materials. And so now I would prefer that you don't. I don't want you to, but I can't do, I can't do anything about it. So I think you'll find it a more valuable experience if you go into it as if this was a certification exam for any sort of professional certification. Some of those places, so they have testing centers where you go to take your exam. Some of them will like wand you or pat you down before you go in to take the exam. They're that serious about it. And so treat it somewhat in the same way. The nice thing about exams are that they're somewhat objective. I mean, you could argue one way or the other, I guess, with that, but they're a lot more objective than me reading your lab reports. And they're they're very quantitative in nature, and it's hard to beat that with other assessments. So the third exam will not be comprehensive. So think of it as like 3 midterm exams, and then there will be a course project. This is really important for you to think about right now and in the next week or two. So I would like you to complete a project, and I don't care if you collaborate with others, but again, I want your work to be your own work. I have access to some industrial hygiene data. I have access to, well, anyone has access to these industrial hygiene data. And the EPA also makes certain data publicly available. So I have a few data sets. I would like you to pick one. We'll talk about these more later, but I'd like you to pick one of the data sets that you would like to work with, perform an analysis on that data set. And then these are your 2 options here, red pill or blue pill. As your deliverable, you can either present a poster at the Arizona Health and Safety Summit in Tempe, and that's it. So the timeline is the problem with this one. It's during spring break, and it's March 14th, so that gives you about half the semester to work on this. That's part of the reason why it's not as intensive as the other option. The other option is more typical. So I would like you to develop a technical report of the analysis that you did. It'll be a 3 to 4 page report, so a little bit longer than your regular lab reports. And then I'd also like you to present at the end of the semester to the class. I say 15 minutes. I guess I'd say that's a maximum time, 10 to 15 minutes. So think about that, whether you're going to be available during spring break or not, and then you'll get to pick. I guess to give you a little bit better sense right now, and I'll send you more information later this week, but about the data sets, never mind. So the industrial hygiene data set is from MSHA. I didn't tell you, some of you know this, but my background is in the mining industry. And I don't know of any other industries that make the quantity and the detail of data available that MSHA does. So they make publicly available all sorts of information regarding safety and health in the mining industry. I think that's part of the incentive that the mining companies have to actually work on it, is because anybody can look and see how they're doing. But it's different. So the data set that you'll have in this class is for health samples. So when MSHA inspectors go to inspect mine sites, they will take samples, air samples, noise samples. That's mostly what they do, but they might take wipe samples. Anyway, so there's noise, and then there's a whole bunch of airborne exposure types in there. I'm going to give you, if you're interested in that data set, there's about 10 or 12 different exposure types that I'll narrow it down for you, and you focus on one. So, there's silver dust, lead, silica, all sorts of stuff, welding fumes. So you pick one, then I'd like you to, this is a descriptive analysis. So tell me, what types of mines have this problem the most? Where are they? In the U.S., that sort of a thing. So nothing too intense, but a descriptive analysis. And then the other data sets, there's a data set available from the Deep Horizon disaster. So there are all sorts of chemicals released into the Gulf of Mexico when that happened. EPA was sampling like crazy during that time, and so there's a data set of sample locations and for a bunch of different chemicals. So you can look at that data set, or EPA publishes data on sampling they take on a lot of cities in the U.S. So they have a sampling station in Prescott. They have sampling stations all over the place. Like you to look at, pick a health exposure. So they have, the main ones are particulates or like ozone, for example. But pick one of the, something like that, and then do an analysis for that. Anyway, again, descriptive analysis. So nothing too intense, but just let us kind of paint the picture. What is the status of this exposure in these areas of the country? Questions? So if anyone is thinking of doing the Health and Safety Summit, I will have transportation arranged for us. So you won't need to drive yourself unless you want to.
Is the school providing the printing for the posters as well?
Yes. Yes. So Professor Coleman and the department will take care of the poster printing and your registration fees. So there shouldn't really be any, and I think that includes lunch. I can't remember if it did include lunch last time. You shouldn't, if I've overlooked something, let me know, but there shouldn't be any cost to you to go unless you drive yourself. In research methods, yes. Okay. Yep. Same one.
Same little small room or something?
So they are going to move the student posters to the expo area. So there'll be vendors and student posters. So it should be a lot more. Yeah. Which for some people that's a positive and some people that's a negative. But anyway, so it should be a fairly interactive poster session. My goal there is just to get you in front of professionals if this is a field that you're interested in. And I apologize if it's not, but it'll still be a valuable experience, I think, even if you're interested in other things. Any other questions? All right. Required course materials. I provide these two. So these are linked in each module. I tried, some of you know, I hate paper. So try to make it, give you digital access to stuff where I can. Also the NIOSH Pocket Guide. So there's a PDF, but also a web app for that. You can access that on your computer at any point. They used to, you could request this Pocket Guide. It's called Pocket Guide, but it's kind of large. I don't know many pockets that it would fit into, but you can request from NIOSH that they send you one for free. That's tax dollars at work, right? But they're out of print. I'm guessing they don't have plans to be in print anytime soon, especially with the government shutdown. So just go digital, I guess. If you really want a hard copy, let me know, and maybe we can figure something out. The one thing I would like you to have hard copy is the TLV book. To be honest, so I took my CIH exam a little over a year ago. To be honest, if you had any inkling of taking that exam, I think this is the single best resource. And even if you're not taking the exam, the single best small, it's a little bit more pocket size than the Pocket Guide. It's still, you need some cargo pants or something, but single best resource on industrial hygiene that is concise. if you want something more comprehensive, then can we show that off? Okay. Then this book is a bit more what you might be interested in, Fundamentals of Industrial Hygiene. I put it as recommended. It has a lot of good information, and in-depth information, but we're not going to, quite get that deep. Originally, there was a lab class in the curriculum here, and it might still be listed some places where you look, an industrial hygiene lab class. So an entirely separate class for you to learn the hands-on stuff. And I like labs, and I wanted to incorporate them into this class and make it not just theory. And so it's kind of a hybrid, but that means we can't get into as much depth necessarily as we could otherwise. I'm okay with that, though. I think sometimes you'll find in your career there might be advantages to being a specialist or a generalist. I think it's best to start out as a generalist. That gives you some optionality and flexibility in the direction you go with your career. And then over time, you specialize and can start to focus in on specific areas. I mean, if you think of medicine as an example, how many, I guess I'm not super familiar with all the different specialties, but we'll just say this. In which category are there more physicians, family medicine or like pediatric neurosurgery? Family physicians, why? So it's more generalized. So there are a lot of them. So, if you were in medicine and you wanted, so I'll describe a scenario where you have a problem. Let's say you want to be a pediatric neurosurgeon, but you want to live in a small rural town. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You could live in LA, you could live in Phoenix, you could live in large metropolitan areas. So the more specialized you become, the more your geography will become limited. That's one downside, but an upside to becoming specialized is the pay, right? You'll make more money. Geography will be more limited. Things to consider. If you're a generalist, then you can kind of live almost anywhere, right? So the same with whatever career field you're considering. The more generalized you are, you have more optionality in terms of what you do and where you go. You won't make as much money, though, and you might not be as in high demand. Anyway, so things to consider. If you, now I send a message out regarding this. If you become a student member, then they will send you one of these at no extra cost. So you can get it for $30, or and you'll get extra credit in the class if you do that. Or you can buy it. I haven't checked the used price anywhere, but this is a 2016. They don't change that much from year to year.
Do they automatically send it to you? Or do you have to
Yes.
go in and say, I want it?
They automatically send it to you. It might take a little bit, but after Martin Luther King Day and President's Day, by the time we should start class, hopefully you'll have it. I want it to be I find this to be a really useful resource. I recommend having a calculator. If you ever plan to take a professional certification exam that involves math, I guarantee they're going to require that you do the math on something like that calculator. If you already have one that you're familiar with and you like to use, then that's fine. For the CSP and the CIH, that calculator is accepted. So, and I had never used it before I started studying for the exam, but I found it to be a pretty helpful calculator.
But you're not allowed to use programmable calculator? Like a
No.
1089 or a.
No, because people, might put answers into their calculator, but
This class, so we don't have to use those.
that's fine. Yep, in this class, that's fine. For professional certifications, they're not going to allow that. But some of them actually, more and more exams are computer based. I mean, I would want it to be computer based, in a lot of ways. Maybe not some others, but some exams now give you like a virtual calculator, and I don't know. I still like to hit buttons, but anyway, maybe it's just, I don't know. I still want that physical thing. They will give you scratch paper too, but well, yeah. Trying to remember. I think the CSP does give you scratch paper for a little bit. I thought they didn't, and then I gave you virtual scratch paper, and I was like, "That's really helpful. Thank you." There was another resource I was thinking about adding here, and I can't remember what it was, but I'll let you know. So I expect you to come to class and participate, but you're all adults. I know life comes up. Traffic incidents come up. Maybe you have an appointment, and that's fine. Just let me know ahead of time. So in the past, I have accepted late work, as in like a year ago. I don't anymore. Part of what I plan to do to help alleviate that, because I know, well, one, if you do have like a medical emergency or something, let me know, and we can make an exception for you. Otherwise, that's what the extra credit is for, is if you got a lot of stuff and you push that off, there is extra credit. And so just do some extra credit to make up whatever points that would have been. So the amount of extra credit that I am going to offer will at least be equivalent to one lab report, maybe a little bit more, but not much more. So if you, for whatever reason, can't get to one, just, I don't know, you got a ton of stuff and you decide can't get to this right now, you can make up those points with some extra credit. So I am going to assign groups, but that will be later. After I assign groups, I am open to some changing of groups. I want to make sure that each group has a decent mix of capabilities, I guess you could say. And so I want to try and keep that mix, but I'm also like, if there are two of you that hate each other, let me know. And I don't want that either. So I'll work with you to get groups that you're happy with. I think you know that. You can read these policies later.
What's the cutoff point on treatment, feeding? What's the cutoff point for that?
I may have drafted it, and then was it higher up? Okay, I see. Exceeding. It's kind of tricky. Maybe because I've seen work from students that I know they did, and I think I can change this, but it looks at bibliographies, for example, works cited, and I mean, like, and it will count that as duplicate, as as plagiarized or whatever it considers that. And so sometimes those percentages are a little bit inflated, but definitely above 50%. That would be considered, I would like you to, try again, basically. And it's, it kind of changes with each class. We'll say 50% for now. I feel like, like I said, you'll be working together. And what I don't want is, copy paste. Okay. If it's the same idea, turning in might pick up some stuff, but I don't think it'll go over 50%. So. So none of what we do should involve IRB. I point this out, I guess, just because I'm on the committee now. I'm learning more about it, but if you are, and I guess in case you want to do a capstone that involves human subjects, possibly, if your data is from a public source and, it's data that you can't like track to and identify people with, that's usually okay. Also, if the data you're using is strictly for a class project and it's not going to be published somewhere else, that's okay. And if the data you're using is, say it will go to someone else, but it's kind of a consulting type project, that's okay. So all of those can bypass IRB applications with, or at least, a full review. I guess as an example, I have 3 undergrad students doing some work for the Yavapai Humane Society related to noise, ergonomics, emergency management, and ventilation. Anyway, and we are collecting data, and some of it is even specific to a person, but it's for them and it's for their own improvement. And so it's not considered, we don't, it is human subjects, but we don't have to go through that process, the review process. What else was I going to say? If you have a disability, please contact the office support services for that. I'm willing to accommodate whatever, anything they say. And you can read through these others. I do want to point out the days we won't be here. So Martin Luther King Jr. Day, don't come, please. Well, you can, but no one else be here. And then also President's Day, February 18th. I think that's it besides spring break. And so we will have one field trip. I guess maybe we could have more. We used to have a lot more, but logistically it gets hard. And I don't know. I mean, maybe we should. I mean, students. I'm curious to hear your thoughts because I know in the past students love that, but then when it comes time to consider what you've learned over the course of the semester, I guess it's harder to quantify, and I don't know. They didn't feel quite so hot about the field trips, but anyway, I'm curious what you guys think about like I say field trips. Is less a field trip and more a mix of that with an assessment. So I'd be open to one more. I just have to make it happen. Sometimes it takes a little bit to coordinate that, but on April 15th, hopefully if everything works out, we'll be going to the the airport press kit. I forget the official name, but they call it the airport wastewater treatment plant. And learning about that process now, it's relevant to environmental health. I think it's so it is kind of stinky. I mean, it's you might imagine, and actually, I'm gonna pick on a recent grad. Does anyone know Daniel Solomon? You don't know him, Steve? Okay.
I have one class with that.
Oh, okay.
Nothing to
Okay. So the smells really bothered him when we went. Anyway, so I guess I'm putting out that disclaimer. I didn't anticipate that. But anyway, I don't think that bad. And most, everyone except him seemed to be okay. Maybe, yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. Maybe I'll have some on hand in case anyone is freaking out. But anyway, so it's kind of stinky. I mean, they're treating poop, so like, but most of the plant isn't stinky. There's really the head, I forget what they call it. There's the main intake where everything comes in. That stuff is stinky. But once it starts getting treated, then it's not that bad. And we don't really hang out in that area much. But anyway, I think though it's useful. It's a useful experience to understand what happens when you flush the toilet or you use your disposal in your kitchen sink or whatever. It's not like it just goes away. We don't see it, so we don't think about it. But people who dump their meds in the toilet and flush them down, or just from all of us, anyone who takes medication, some of that is excreted in urine, some of it goes into our water supply, and we hope that all the entire treatment process takes care of that, but some of it does make it into our drinking water, and so you'll have in the parts per trillion or even billion range some of those chemicals. So there is some narcotics in the water you drink. There is some birth control pill. I don't remember the drug it is, but there's some of that in the water you drink. And when you start to wonder, like, why do these things happen, like health-wise in a community or in a population? Well, maybe the joke is that it's in the water. Maybe it is, I don't know. But anyway, it's helpful to go to the plant to see that process, just understand that a little better. I've never tried going to a landfill, but I think the wastewater treatment plant is a bit more interesting than landfill and more beneficial experience. But you'll learn about what they actually do to remove the poop and clean it up before they recharge the aquifer. And that's a fancy way of just saying let it soak in the ground. For us, because we're a graduate class, finals is on the same day as we meet, same day and time that we would meet normally. So final will be on actually Monday, April 29th. Regular class time, it'll be presentations from those who opted for blue pill option. And that's it. That's all we'll do that day. The exam and the project report for the course will close on Wednesday, May 1st, just to give me a little bit of time to grade those before grades are due. Any questions on just the course in general? Actually, one thing I forgot. To mention is I would like you to look at my comments on your reports. and my feedback. It's like almost anything. The only way you get better at it is doing it over and over and over. So you'll have 9 reports to write. I would like you to look at my feedback and my comments. Sometimes it's kind of painful to read, and I'm going to apologize right now. I don't put very many of the positive comments. If you see a blank spot, that's a positive, okay? Like, he didn't make any comments there. That means it was good. Okay, so I'm apologizing right now for not having lots of those, positive and feel good comments on there. If you see a blank spot, that means that's what was supposed to be there. I'm just in a hurry to get through all the reports. But please do go back. Don't take it personal, but look at my comments and my feedback. And if you look at each, the assignment for each report, it's due on one Wednesday, but it doesn't close until the Wednesday after. Let's just go into, I guess, the first one. So you can see it's due February 6th. It doesn't close until the 13th. Now what that does is it gives me a few days to grade them. Okay, so you'll submit it. It's due Wednesday. It's like this one is due February 6th at midnight. Over the next few days, I'll grade all of your reports, and then my promise is that by Friday or Saturday of that week, I'll have it done. And then if you would like to go back and fix, what I've pointed out, then you can, and you'll have until the 13th to resubmit with revisions to get a better grade. I am going to be brutal, especially at the beginning of the semester, and especially with your first iteration of each report, because I would like you to look at them, okay? So be aware of that. Over time, you will improve, and so, you might not be shocked when you see a grade. So that is so that you will go back and take a look, okay? So don't freak out too much. Just go back and rework it. Let's take a 5-minute break. I'll try to remember breaks, especially because we have, such a long time. And in this class now, some weeks when, like today, we don't have a lab, and there will be a couple other times where we don't have a lab. But on lab days, kind of just moving over to wherever we're going to do the lab might be part of the break, and maybe not. But do please feel free to let me know if you need a break. If it's sometimes I can tell by the way your eyes are like glazing over, but if you need one, if it's been an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours and I'm still going, let me know, and we'll take a break. So let's take 5 minutes right now. Yeah.
Yes, for the lab that you said, we still have to leave here and then we'll just go to the lab.
So we'll have about half of the class will be lecture, and then the other half will be lab.
Oh, we'll
So
go to
come
the
here.
lab.
Yeah,
Okay,
so come
this is
here,
where we're supposed
and
to
then
go.
we'll go together to wherever we need to go.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
My email.
Yes, I did, and I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make sure you said you got it.
I did.
I knew you were busy, so that's why I wrote like whenever.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So I will get to it. Something to keep you aware of as well, in the same sort of area, in case you're interested. I don't know what's going to happen with this, but there's a startup company from the Valley that is wanting to work with us to validate a device they have that they're calling it a screening tool, and they use, have you heard the term saccades? Well, it is a biometric, but have you heard the term saccades?
Can you spell it?
SACCAD, I think. So it refers to what's the right word? Like micro movements of the eyes as you try to focus or fixate on a point. They use a specific signature pattern of saccades in someone's eyes to identify a type of impairment. So fatigue is one, but they can do it for marijuana, and they're wanting to develop it for opioids,
That sounds awesome.
a lot of other stuff. They want to market to a lot of industries, but aviation obviously is one of them. So that's why they're. So
You gonna go meet with them?
we've met with them, although I think it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of for stuff to happen. Well, I'll keep you updated if there's a major development.
I'll let you know that I trying to get a loan so I don't have to work. And if I work, I mean outside work, I'll have more time.
Okay. That's a hard decision. I remember trying to make that decision.
If I can get it, if I can get the government one, I'm
Mm.
gonna do it. If I can't get the government one, I can't do it because I'm never gonna try to.
Yeah, I for a while I opted for loans, so I took out student loans, federal student loans, until I got a job with the university. I was like, why didn't I do this before? But
That's not gonna.
yeah, it may not. I mean, I don't want to like influence you. I'm just relating my experience that it's a hard decision, and I guess for me, what I'm thinking of right now is the paying off the loan side, which is what I'm dealing with,
I've been
and
doing that for the last 12 years now.
well, yeah, and it's originally I was thinking public service loan forgiveness,
Exactly.
but so many people are having trouble with it. Now I know, I mean, we've kind of kept up on the news for it. They didn't take all the steps that you're supposed to. Like these people are getting denied. They didn't verify their employment. They don't have the right type of loans, or that, there's something wrong. Again, we've done all that, but it's kind of, we're like banking on this thing that 10 years, I mean, now it's like 8 or 9 years from now, it'll pay off. We really don't want to be in the position of those people who got denied. Like they decided, okay, I'll be a school teacher because my loans will be forgiven. And now, yeah, I'm going to be in debt the rest of my life, basically. Yeah.
And go work for agencies such as EA or whatnot. Part of your negotiation, the hiring process, that we would admit, like, the whole, student loan.
Yeah. And
No, they're also sitting on private because
Hmm.
you have, again, this requires a skill set. So it's people not, I just finished my undergrad. Masters, PhD.
Yeah.
For level.
Mhm.
Yes, we want to.
Oh, it's more.
Mhm. Interesting. That's when I was thinking of doing a professional health degree, I was considering, the Navy or, because they have those programs where they pay for they'll pay for your school, and then, you do so many years. Yeah, you get a stipend.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
an additional pay every year.
Yeah, it's true. And I have a friend who I think is a physical therapist, either that or an occupational therapist. But anyway, he did that, and he just finished. So now I'm like really jealous because, dang it, maybe I should have. I think it was 4 years. I'm not totally sure. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the I don't know where he was, but yeah. Do I want my freedom or yeah?
Temporary side is good. Go into that life after the fact. Oh, well, we're going to the Navy. I have a wife and 2 children.
Yeah.
House, and you're like, you're going to Japan.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
South Korea.
Yeah. All those things that you have to think about when you're deciding what to do. But oh.
Trying to apply for the graduate plus loan. No, ours, like the graduate, the unsubsidized graduate loan, you can take out 20,000. That's your, this one is based on. So I don't have that No, they're all unsubsidized. So 6.6% unsubsidized. Yeah, the thing with those guys, they will not work.
All right.
Like if you're unemployed and you still owe them, the government.
So traditionally, industrial hygiene has been broken into these 4 areas. So the majority of the course is going to be on the industrial side, but we will have at least 3 classes dedicated to the environmental side. So I guess it's a 9-3 split. If you look at the course, the learning outcomes, they do tend to focus more on the industrial hygiene side. It's not just that that's my background, and so I like to focus on it. And environmental health is important. I remember my first environmental health class in undergrad, and I was sort of freaking out, learning about all the stuff that like I drink in my water and I eat in my food and all this stuff. But I mean, that's the realities of modern life. Not even if there's some things you can't get away from, even if you were in Antarctica or the North Pole, it's still there. Like plastics are, they cover the whole earth. You're not going to get away from residual plastics. We've done that good of a job of spreading them everywhere. When I say that, I mean, not like a 6-pack holder, or plastic bags. I mean, microscopic amounts of plastic. You will be ingesting them for the rest of your life. Okay, so industrial hygiene is broken up into these 4 parts, at least traditionally. anticipation, recognition, evaluation, and then control. And there's sort of this loop. If you step back, you could really sort of boil this process down into most any management system. It's sort of the same ideas. Now, it's a little bit different here with the industrial hygiene aspect, but if you think about safety, if you think about quality, basically you're going to be looking for problems, looking for problems, measuring those problems, and fixing the problems, and sort of going in that kind of a loop. Now, there are things that are added or taken out depending on what field you're in, what system you're using, but it's similar. And I like to add these 2 C's onto the end of here to confirm after you've implemented a control, or you can kind of assume maybe it goes back into the cycle, and the confirmation is by evaluating again, but also communicate. I have seen professionals presenting at scientific conferences, and I know they are the expert in this area that they're presenting, but because they cannot communicate because they cannot communicate clearly, that is not apparent. In fact, if you didn't know that they were the expert in this area, you would think that they don't know anything. They don't know what they're talking about. So, I mean, you all may be familiar with the art of BSing, right? So someone who's a really good BSer, they may have no idea what they're talking about, but because they can BS and communicate, BSing is really communicating, right? So because they can communicate well, they come across as an expert. I remember seeing my PhD advisor in meetings sometimes talking about something, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you don't know anything that you're talking about. But because he was a really good communicator, everyone's like, oh yeah, nodding their head. Oh yeah, that's right. Anyway, and me thinking, like shaking my head, can't believe you get away with this. But anyway, so communication is super important, though. If you have evaluated something in industry, in a workplace setting, you're going to have to let people know the results of what you did. And there are lots of types of reports that you may end up writing in your career, but it's really important to be able to communicate what the problem was, what you did about it, or at least maybe some measurements you took, what you want management to do about it. Management, we're the frontline workers. It's important. You might have this awesome plan or an awesome idea or this awesome study you did, but if you can't communicate it clearly to people, it's not really going to amount to anything. So that's part of the reason why reports are an important part of this class. Just a little bit of background on industrial hygienists and the field in general. For certification, you do have to have a degree, and that says engineering. Most industrial hygienists don't necessarily have an engineering background. Some are chemical engineers, for example, but most don't start out that way. Usually it's in the health sciences, somewhere in that arena. That's what my background is. I didn't plan to do industrial hygiene. It just kind of worked out this way. I added these here. If you are interested in the certification, you need 4 years of experience, a degree, you all have, an application, and letter of, they call it a professional reference, but you have to find someone who is a CIH to write a letter and say, yeah, they know what they're talking about. And then, money, of course. All these boards want your money. That's how they stay in business. That's just for the application. Then you'll have renewal fees and continuing education after that. I'm focusing on the CIH because this is the industrial hygiene class, but the CSP is one that you should all consider because you will be GSPs once you finish this degree program. And it's similar I think it might be 3 years of experience though, not 4. You don't need the professional reference, but they'll still take your money. um, and some of you may already have experience that you can count towards this, so you could graduate and then go take the CSP if you want.
How do they verify?
That's a good question. I'm not totally.
Like when you got your CIH, just submit your resume saying that.
Yes.
From the employer. Could be.
So let's see, for the CIH, they do ask for a letter from your current employer. You fill out the experience application. I don't know what they do on the other side though, if they track anything down, but my guess is they don't. So there you go. Well, I wouldn't lie, but
I think the truth.
well, just it'll, like for the CSP, for example, it'll say X number of years where at least 50% of your job was safety. Safety is a really broad term. And like I was saying, a lot of times environmental, health, safety, security, loss control, risk management, all that stuff gets, lumped together. You may even be doing some HR duties with workers' compensation that would still classify as safety. So it kind of depends. I mean, but I think it's something like 3 or 4 years where at least 50% of your duties were safety related.
Okay, so it's 3 to 4 years, not.
Well, for the CIH, it's 4. I just can't remember for CSP if it's 3 or 4, but it's one of those two. It's good to become certified for a lot of different reasons. As long as you're, you can keep paying the renewal fees. But one, when you're looking for a job, often there'll be postings that say CSP is required, or whatever it is, whatever certification you're thinking about. If you make the cutoff for a job posting and you are certified, you will stand out a little bit more than people who don't. The other thing is consulting, I guess. If you are interested in doing any consulting on the side, which I do, and I think is useful, as long as you have a job that allows that, where you have some flexibility. And consulting doesn't have to be going to work sites and doing stuff on site, but it could be stuff you can do from your computer or whatever with your brain. But anyway, if you're considering doing any consulting on the side or maybe full time, the more letters you can have after your name, the better. Because there are, for example, has anyone ever used Upwork? There's stuff that you guys could do on Upwork. It's like a freelancing service. And there are others as well. I put my information on there, and a construction company from California was wondering if I could do lead compliance plans for them. I don't really have time for it, but so I told them no. But the reason they're asking me is because in the law it says the person who either approves it or develops it has to be a CIH. So they have to find someone who has those letters after their name. I'm talking about CIH, but whatever whatever you want to do, there are lots of benefits to it. So also, if you have a career, sorry, you're all, fairly young, or very young, I guess. I don't know. It's all relative, right? But if you have decades of career in front of you, that certification over time is going to make a big difference in how much money you make. It will be hundreds of thousands or maybe even $1 million over time. So a small bump now will be a big bump later when you're finishing your career. So maybe you won't even make any more than you would otherwise with the certification. By the time you reach the end of your career, your salary is going to be quite a bit higher, because at some point it will bump up because of the certification, even if it's 1,000 or 2,000 or something. But the next time you get promoted, or get a raise or change jobs, it's going to bump up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So it's worth it to look at professional certifications. So when I was in my master's program, I went into it. Now I'm just saying this was my experience. I started the program not even knowing what industrial hygiene was. I was focused on environmental health, specifically the infectious disease side. And the program at University of Arizona is, well, at least it used to have a stronger focus on industrial hygiene than environmental health. What I started realizing, and this is what I guess kind of prompted me to change, was that in environmental health, there are only a few options for jobs. Either I would have to work for a state public health department, which I didn't really want to do, or I'd have to get a PhD and do research and teach. And I didn't really want to do that either. You can see, how life is sometimes, life is sometimes full of ironies, or life is sometimes like a river, and the current is going to take you, no matter how much you want to fight it and try and swim against it, it's going to take you to, that's my PhD advisor. He studied Oriental philosophies, and that was, I can't remember which one, but that's one of them, is don't fight the current in the river. Just try and go with it and use it to get somewhere useful. Anyway, I tried to fight it and I failed. But anyway, so there was an opportunity, an internship to do industrial hygiene at a mine. And I took it, and the rest is history, I guess. But and the same is true of like occupational safety. The advantage of it, even though industrial hygiene, occupational safety are not very sexy jobs necessarily. We like to think so, but they're not really. Although most jobs, they look sexier than they really are when you actually do them. But anyway, the beauty is this industry part, and that's where most work. I mean, at least proportionally, because of that optionality. So you could be an industrial hygienist or occupational safety professional in lots of different types of industries and lots of different places. It just gives some optionality. And then the rest is what you'd find in almost anything: consulting, government, academia, insurance, and labor. But so mostly industry, consulting. I mean, these are both private. Academia could be private. Insurance is private. These could be public, both. But in labor, some unions have occupational safety or industrial hygienists on their payroll. There aren't quite so many unions, I don't think, in the West as there are back, like in the Midwest. Back east. I don't have data to support that, but I'm less familiar with unions than maybe my peers back that way. So there are 4 main types of exposures that I'm gonna talk about. And we, in industrial hygiene and environmental health, both focus a lot on chemical and physical. I guess environmental focuses more than the industrial side on biological, but chemical is the big one. And then these are kind of debatable. I guess environmental might focus more on the bio and industrial focus more on the physical. You know, I'm not totally sure. I don't have data to support that, but we care a lot about chemicals and what they do to human health. And, you know, there are good reasons for that, but the chemical agents come in a lot of different forms. There's gases, vapors, particulate aerosols, and others. We're going to focus on the airborne aspect for industrial hygiene. For environmental health, a lot of the focus, there is some focus on airborne, but a lot of the focus is on water. So those chemicals getting into water. Physical agents. So think of anything, well, chemicals have a type of energy, but I don't know, I like to think of physical agents as types of energy. There are lots of different types of energy, but noise is a pressure wave traveling through the air. You have radiation, so that's a type of nuclear energy. Heat, and or the lack of heat, which is cold, that's another type of energy. So what's happening here is energy is being transferred from the environment to your body and affecting your health somehow. Ergonomics, that's where I put a real quick disclaimer. So industrial hygienists think that the world is industrial hygiene and safety is this piece over here, and ergonomics is a piece of industrial hygiene over here. If you're an ergonomist, you think the world is, well, human factors and, you know, specialist and ergonomist. You view the world as all ergo, and there's a piece of it that is safety and a piece of it that is IH. And if you're in safety, I would erase this. This would be safety. Industrial hygiene is a little piece, and ergonomics is a little piece. You know, we're all we all view things with our own little lens. So in this course, I'm gonna be treating things as, oh, this is all industrial hygiene, and like ergonomics and safety are a piece. It's not really, you know, like that. Just that disclaimer. And that's something I didn't really recognize until I started, you know, until I started working here, being around a certified professional ergonomist and learning about human factors, and you know, and seeing the safety side of things. I had always been looking at everything with my IH glasses and realized, oh wow, you know, it kind of colors your perspective in ways that, you know, it's not necessarily good or bad, just it's just different. But anyway, just to clarify, so I'm saying, yeah, see, ergonomics and safety are this little piece of industrial hygiene. Not so, but it's where, if I had to categorize it, I would put it. And we're not gonna touch on ergonomics in this class because you get like 2 full courses of it from a CPE. So, I mean, I will point out, maybe I'll point it out right now, and then we'll never talk about ergonomics again. But at least in this edition of the TLV, in Dr. Fogelman's ergonomics class, do you talk about the ACGIH TLV for ergo or not?
We touch on it,
Okay.
but it's nothing.
You don't actually do an exercise with it, right? Or do you?
We cover so many different variables. Like, this is this version. This version is
Yeah.
I think this, and you do that. So hard to differentiate that specific. But
Yeah. So I don't think the ACGIH approach is one of the focal areas for yeah. Okay. So in that class, you'll cover lots of different ways of assessing ergonomics. This is a different way. You just pick your flavor, right? So the ACGIH has developed a way of assessing ergonomics, and you can learn about that method in this book. I do like that this is pretty focused and to the point. It's just a little book, and it has lots of tables and figures and stuff. So if you're ever interested in a different method, you can look at this. Again, you'll have your psychophysical tables, Nayash lifting equation, Reba, Rula, all those more common ones. ACGIH is not that common, but just letting you know it's an option if you ever want to look at it. Biological agents, so infectious agents and allergens. This is particularly true for indoor air quality. It's something that we care more about in indoors generally. And we have one class and lab dedicated actually to mold. So we'll talk about that a little bit more at that point. And we don't have any class period dedicated to psychosocial, is what I would actually call it, but psychosocial exposures. It's an area that I think is more important than we give it attention or time. And here I say that, but we're not going to really cover it in this class. So, like in a human factors psychology course, you would talk about this a lot more than what we're going to talk about. It's interesting because I've been in meetings where there are all these, like, I assume and supposed, they are leading experts in the field of industrial hygiene. Usually in mining, that's where I've sat, but these experts in industrial hygiene in mining. And the purpose of the meeting is to identify the big issues with health in mining, occupational health. And so there's physicians, researchers from NIOSH, people from MSHA, academics, all these people there, and people from industry. And one in each of the meetings I'm thinking of, mental health was brought up. And in one of them, it was kind of like, oh yeah, that's important, write it down, and then like move on. And then in the other one, it was like, that's not really our area, move on. Anyway, I think it is important. Part of the challenge with it is it's so much easier to just go measure how much of a certain chemical is in the air than measure how stressed or how mentally strained someone is. It's too like soft and fluffy for us. We don't understand it. So it's like, that's a thing, but we'll focus on what we can measure, basically. So I want to just point out it is important. We're not really covering it. Those soft and squishy things are hard. So I purposely left off one route of exposure on this list, at least one, I guess, depending on how you define things. But of this list that you can see, so what is excluded is not that important. Which of these do you think is the most important, and then why? Why? Okay, that's okay. So I'm not going to say yay or nay on anything yet, but Okay, so possibly easy access to exposing your entire system. Why else? Maybe inhalation. Okay. Yeah, I mean that would be true of these others as well, but okay. So I mean, those are all true of inhalation, and but some of them are true of these others. So there are two main points that I want to highlight. One is what Mike was saying. Sorry, Mike. That's why I have the nameplates. Is the ease with which it can become systemic. It does depend on some things like the solubility of the substance. So there will be some things that cannot cross into your blood stream from the lungs, but there are plenty of things that do. Also, the ease with which the contaminant or the exposure is dispersed into the environment. So ingestion isn't going to happen a lot. Well, at least in industrial hygiene, we don't think of it too much. You make sure you don't eat lunch, in the lead producing factory or the chemical manufacturing facility. You eat lunch somewhere else. That usually takes care of it pretty much. Okay, and dermal is a possibility, but in terms of the prevalence of dermal exposures, it's not very high. So we focus a lot on inhalation, and if you look at the syllabus, almost half of our class periods will be focused on air-related exposures or the control, so ventilation and respiratory protection. We're focused on the airborne. There are good reasons for that. It would be interesting to look at these more. We're not going to, but generally the focus is on inhalation for those reasons. So for dermal, if you look in the NIOSH Pocket Guide, they make a distinction between just dermal contact and absorption. What is the difference there, do you think? So they're both dermal. They both are on your skin, but one they say contact, basically, and the other they say absorption. What would be the difference between those two?
Contact burns, maybe?
With the intensity of the absorption?
Well, so either it's yes or no. So with absorption, it can become systemic. So your skin will absorb it into your blood, into your cardiovascular system. With dermal, with simply, if they make the distinction between contact versus absorption, with contact, it will affect your skin externally, but it doesn't break through that barrier. So which do you think is more concerning? Yeah, yes. So, yeah. So some things may be absorbed, but they just don't really have any toxic effect on other parts of your body. But yes, generally you'd be more concerned about something that could affect other organ systems and not just the skin.
For everything else, I mean, not all absorption is going to be thermal. For example, if you look at the specifically physical agents, those may not necessarily affect the skin. Like pressure waves, your ears specifically are going to be very sensitive to pressure waves. Eyes, or really any orifice on the body.
So that is a really good point. Absorption. So again, in industrial hygiene, there's this strong leaning towards chemical and towards airborne, generally speaking. And so a lot of the categories that we try to fit things into have airborne chemicals in mind. But you're exactly right. There isn't necessarily, I mean, it would be absorption, but not necessarily through the skin for all of these, even for ergonomics, for example. So you are absorbing energy either from the type of motion you're doing, or if you have a jackhammer, your body's absorbing energy from that piece of equipment, but it's not necessarily through the skin. It's, I guess, like with a jackhammer, that is part of it. But ionizing radiation, for example, it may, any part of your body may be absorbing the energy with noise. Your body is absorbing it, but the part we care about is your inner ear. So that's a great point. Yeah.
So absorption and ejection is the same.
No. So injection would be, classic example would be the custodian getting the trash and someone has a needle in there and it pokes them, like it. So with bloodborne pathogens, that would be a concern. So injection is a possibility. It's not that common. There tend to be pretty good controls you can implement to prevent this. Although, it is still an issue. And, in 603, we learn about gloves and and the ratings. There are gloves designed to prevent puncture from a needle, for example, but it's hard to design one of those. Only certain materials will do that. With anticipation, this is something I think that you develop over time, and not just for industrial hygiene, but any type of risk. As you become familiar with the process, the materials, the operation, the conditions, as you become familiar with those things, you'll be able to better anticipate what the hazards will be. So if it is your first time walking on to the production floor of Boeing, for example, you might have some guesses from your past experience about what the hazards would be, but over time, as you gain experience, then you'll have a much better understanding of what those could be, and you might actually anticipate some of them. This here is just mentioning that. Now, I don't think this always used to be the case, the cradle to grave concept for industrial hygiene. Certainly for environmental health, that has been a thing for a long time. But more and more in industrial hygiene, there's a focus on the health exposures throughout the entire process or chain of cradle to grave for a process, for a product. So anticipation is part of industrial hygiene. We don't focus on that so much. Well, at least formally. So I will ask you to anticipate hazards, but it's something you just kind of have to learn through experience. Or learning about specific types of industries. So there is a textbook, a book that I thought about having for this class, but it's out of print. And it's more of a reference, but it actually details dozens of different industry types, and it talks about the different hazards and processes in each of them. So you could read a book like that and also be able to anticipate. Recognition is kind of the same idea as anticipation, but now you are on the floor at Boeing and you're using your eyes to look for hazards, or wherever. I'm just using Boeing as an example, but now you're on the ground, you're on the floor looking for those. And also that, that's one of those things that I think you kind of develop over time. with experience, having seen it multiple times. That's one reason why the tours or field assessments are helpful for this class, is just to see it. Helps a lot. Now I will try, through ASSP, we will be scheduling tours of facilities. If you go on any of those, that counts towards extra credit. It it's hard to communicate just exactly the advantage of seeing things over talking about them, but it's huge. Anyway, so as you see and become familiar with materials, processes, operations, behaviors, you'll start to understand and be able to recognize those hazards. A lot of this happens in safety, in industrial hygiene. It happens in a lot of fields, but professionals want to try to do their job all from the office, and it just doesn't necessarily work that way. Now, there's a lot you can do, but there's a lot you'll be missing if you don't go onto the floor at least every once in a while to see things and see how it's going. You also, I'll use an example to illustrate this point. So at the mine that I interned at, there was a senior industrial hygienist and a mid-level, or a not entry, but lower level industrial hygienist. And then there was me. Later on, there was a change at the senior level, and the senior has to deal with programs. So they are kind of a higher level, a program level. They're dealing with the written program, implementing programs, changing things. So they have to dedicate some of their time to that. So this senior IH was not in the field very much or at all. The other lower level IH was. He was the one doing the sampling and working with crews to assess their exposures. And you could definitely tell when people came into the office to interact with the IH team, which one they preferred to talk to, right? Because they knew the other one. He had developed a relationship with them. And so he got information that, the other one couldn't, because she hadn't developed a relationship. Now, again, it was kind of her job to do that stuff. And so it's harder, but if you can, try and get out on the floor, show people that you're not just the safety guy or girl in their office all the time, but that you actually, you care about what's going on and you want to know. Okay. I do want to end early, so we will do, or at least on time. I'm afraid if we do all these exercises, then we won't have time. So we'll do at least some of these just all together instead of in teams. Let's make a list. So I'd like you to call out sources. Actually, am I missing something in here? Okay, I think those two slides are switched around. So we're going to be talking about a case study at a glass blowing plant. I've actually never been to one, but we will look at a video. So it's hand blown glass. I don't know. Does anyone know how they make glass now? I mean, is it still hand blown?
Yeah.
Still hand blown?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's interesting. So many things get automated, but there's some things that are really hard to automate, like glass blowing. So our objective is to evaluate the workplace for exposures. And the reason is there's a group of 11 workers who have decided to sue the company because of work-related pneumoconiosis. So that's a weird sounding word that just means dust lung. They have dust in their lungs and they're claiming it's work-related. When we can start to see some of the challenges for the company or for the workers in demonstrating what caused their pneumoconiosis. But anyway, so they've all gone to a local physician who has diagnosed it as work-related pneumoconiosis. And so the company has turned to us as consultants to do an assessment and figure out, is this even possible? Help us out, basically, objectively. So they have a claim, and the company wants some help with it. So knowing that this is a glass blowing company, what are some hazards that you would anticipate, preferably related to airborne exposures of dust? But if you think of something that you're not sure, but you think maybe, then yell it out. Okay. Sand, which sand is basically like pure silica, right? Okay, there is heat involved. Yeah, so if there's something that's kind of process related, but not sure. Oh, sorry. Smoke and fumes. Okay.
Enclosed space.
Okay, that's a possibility. Okay. Someone who hasn't answered. One more. That's the list.
Would you consider the blowing process to be a closed loop? You're taking glass to inhaling directly in front of it. Meaning that if you take that mouth off, that vapor is still in your respiratory.
So have you seen the pipes they use?
Yeah.
Long, but they also, the mouthpiece is like, it's one way. So it's blowing out.
So, well, you'll see the plant on the video. I guarantee at the plant that you'll see that there's some exposure from the actual glass blowing, but a broad approach to the facility. So, but I guarantee there are some fumes and maybe smoke in that glass blowing process that, yeah. But Steve has already answered, so somebody else who hasn't yet. What did I do? I'm blue. It doesn't have to be airborne related, but anything that might be a hazard. Any health hazard. Huh? Okay. Yeah. Broken glass. Are some people going to drop it sometimes? Not necessarily health, but huh?
You have the proper PPE.
Right. You always have to have that balance, though, of can you handle the glass properly? If you have gloves, it can be tricky. Gloves especially can be tricky because we are very tactile when we're working with our hands. Ergonomics, burns. There's I think lots of things that could happen there. All right, so I explained what pneumoconiosis means basically, but I'd like you guys now do it with a partner if you'd like to so that not everyone has to look this up, but you can kind of just share or something, or you can do it individually. I don't really care, but look up what is pneumoconiosis, what flavors of pneumoconiosis are there,
Strawberry.
and what kinds of exposures. Now in 603, I think some of you already did this, or maybe OSHA 30, but Bear with me. By the way, what we just did, making a list of possible exposures and looking up, doing some research on our own, that is all part of anticipation. Before you even get to a site, if you are doing work, trying to figure out what you might see, what you could see, and what might be the reason. All right, so preferably someone who hasn't answered yet. What is pneumoconiosis? A more formal definition than mine. Go for it.
A disease in the lungs due to inhalation of dust characterized by inflammation, coughing, and fibrosis.
Cool. So sounds pleasant, right? Something that you don't want. Someone else, what sorts of forms are there?
The co-workers.
Okay.
Silicosis. I don't even know how to say some of these.
Okay.
Mastosis.
Uh-huh.
Bicyanosis.
Bicyanosis. Okay.
And paralysis.
Okay.
Both of them are just scarring tissues in the lung, or causing inflammation, irritation, and particles being trapped.
Okay. So what do you think the exposure is that caused co-workers' lung? Coal dust. Okay, good. Coal dust. If you breathe in lots of aerosolized coal, then that's what you get. That's a co-worker's lung. You can imagine that's not healthy. So I didn't say this, but I went to med school for a year before I mean, it took less than a year for me to realize I was in the wrong place, but and I should do something else. But I remember, I do remember the biopsy for coworkers' lung, thinking, "Wow, why would you ever want to work in a coal mine?" And I know it's not as dangerous as general public perception makes it out to be, but I still wouldn't want to work in a coal mine. It just seems like a terrible place. All right, silicosis. What's the cause, the agent or contaminant? Silica. It's nice when it's a cognate, right? yeah, like the next one. So what would that one be? Asbestos. All right, bicyanosis. That's one that's not a cognate. Cotton. Yeah, which I wouldn't really think is a thing, but it is. And berilliosis is beryllium. Beryllium gets special attention from OSHA, mostly OSHA. I'm not sure AMSHA, but because of its toxicity, then I know I've recently updated standards on it because it's bad. But anyway, cotton.
Yeah.
Just breathing cotton. What do you mean?
Bicyanosis.
Bicyanosis. Yeah. It's the
The bicyanosis is cotton, borreliosis.
Oh, sorry. So I maybe I wasn't clear with that. So berilliosis is from beryllium,
Yeah, no.
breathing beryllium.
I'm just wondering, like, are you talking about in the field or?
Think of a cotton farmer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. For most of these, it takes industrial scale exposures to cause these conditions. I mean, we all breathe in silica. Maybe not every day. I mean, we spend a lot of time indoors, but if you go outside and it's kind of dusty, you've breathed in silica, but you're not going to get silicosis from, a little bit here and there. Our bodies are designed to deal with a little bit of exposure to that stuff. Otherwise, we'd have to live in a bubble. I guess the one exception kind of here is asbestosis. Now, with any of these, the more exposure, the higher the probability that you'll develop the disease. With asbestosis, it's a little bit of an exception because with a single fiber, you can get cancer. Yeah, that's why everyone freaked out when they first realized, oh wow, this is bad. We need to stop using it. Well, another I was going to mention. There's another pneumoconiosis I was going to mention. Something obliterans. It's called popcorn lung. I forgot what I was going to mention about it, but anyway. Oh well, yeah, it's a flavor that is also included in some vaping flavors. Yeah. Oh, okay. I know what I was going to say about it.
When vape juice is first started coming out, that same chemical was inside of the juice. And so a lot of companies now identify it as that food, but is it
So I was going to use that one as an example of not necessarily occupational. Generally, these diseases develop from occupational exposures, repeated exposures every day, high levels. That's one where, it could be recreational, or I can't remember who it was who read in class about a guy who he ate microwavable popcorn 3 times a day for 10 years. And
that's a Fred article.
That was a Fred one? Okay. Well, so I don't know the veracity of the source, but I mean, I guess it's possible if you ate microwavable popcorn 3 times a day for 10 years, you might develop popcorn lung. Anyway, that's a lot of popcorn. Go for it. So a little bit more about our case. So the plant has 104 workers, so 11 out of 104. It's a little bit more than 10%. And they all have different jobs, so it's not like they share and do different stuff every day. So you have people who mix in the mixing room, the blow room where they actually blow the glass, people who decorate and paint. You'll see the video. It's got to be from like the 70s. The layer operator, so that's like the furnace. That's what they call the furnace. They have packing and shipping and maintenance people. They also have different colors of glass, from clear to opaque, ruby, red, green, yellow, and 3 different colors of blue. They don't do any crystal glass. So for the painting, they use little tiny brushes for lots of different things. I mean, these are the examples given. Santa Claus, different stuff, trees, flowers, I'm sure. And then they pack the finished products, so like a glass or a vase or whatever it happens to be, in cardboard boxes with foam inserts. They have 2 production shifts and 1 maintenance shift. So we've talked about the anticipation part. Now we're going to do the recognition part. We won't play the whole thing, but we'll play part of this video And I'm curious if you would add anything else to the list that we developed before.
Are we just talking about?
That's our focus. I mean, if you see something you want to mention, something else, then feel free. Hopefully, please, hopefully the audio, the trackpad on this has been acting up on me. Hopefully we get the audio.
It is widely recognized that an advanced technology is one of the most distinctive aspects of American society. The historic American
Okay, 1974.
a program of the National Park Service, documents historic, engineering, and industrial works throughout the country. Drawings, photographs, and historical reports are preserved in the Library of Congress for sites and structures which illustrate.
It's fine. I'm just gonna.
Documentary films of surviving industrial processes provide still another means of increasing our understanding, since they preserve the critical relationship between machines and those who use them. This film is part of the Engineering Records Program for the formation of a visual archive of American technological history.
So this is the blowing room. You can see after they blow it, they try and form it into molds.
That was founded in 1891. Actually, young Milton living in the Cumberland, Maryland area formed a company. So they had to have a glass factory, a glass house. There was a bakery in Seneca County, Ohio. So with the West Virginia Charter, 1891, the Seneca Glass Company started in Seneca County, Ohio. And in 1896, the natural gas was discovered in the Morgantown area. And so the Seneca Glass Company moved to its present location in Morgantown in 1896. We were at one time, of course, quite a bit larger than we are today. We had 20-some shops working, whereas today we have 11. We had 60-some cutters, whereas today we have about 12. Of course, back in the turn of the century, in the 1910s, 15, there was no machines to make glass.
So some tasks have been automated. This is the mixing room.
Basic raw materials in our batch are silica sand, soda ash, potash, red lead, niter, and a host of small chemicals for coloring and for what have you. We prepare approximately 2,000 pounds of batch for each pot. In mixing the batch, we of course load out into the batch card sheet. 200 pounds of this or 50 pounds of that. We have all the raw materials filled out in the batch card. We then use another batch where we stack up all the batch with holding tank. Then we reverse the process. We now hose into our mixer and then release all the raw materials as our mixer is moving. So all the raw materials are thoroughly mixed and broken up. Sealed times on some of the different batches, thoroughly mixed, and then upended into the same batch card. You build out the different. We have different formula for every batch we make. Even the colors, like you might think you take a Christmas batch and don't even color it.
So you can see they do have a ventilation system, but
Hey, when you Or yellow, we gotta keep changing the patch because the temper.
I'm curious though how much of their mixture they lose just from that. That could be a production issue, an efficiency thing as well.
The colors added to the batch, actually for twos, one reason being that we can remelt the glass and again use it. Secondly, it acts as a catalyst in the melting process.
Yeah, they reuse it. So this is the layer, the furnace.
After we work it a pot out, at the end of the day, the furnace and we're going to fill the pot in for 2 days, whether it's working. We'll lose
And how much glass do they lose on each of those scoops? I'm not sure on this exactly. You see how much he's sweating? I think that was the actual glass, and not. Was that your question?
No, I think we're talking about that loss or spillover.
Uh-huh.
They have that shuttling of the colored glasses. So
Yeah, you'd hope so. Otherwise, there's money to be made somewhere.
Some colors will come around faster than 28 hours, 32 hours.
Normal t-shirt, no uniform.
You put the rod in there, you stick your rod right down into the glass, you pull it out, and you hold it up like that, and you'll see little bubbles in there, see? Well, if there's bubbles in there, that's not quite cooked enough. So you put that back in, let it cook some more, and then later on you take another.
That's why we go to school, right?
Your glass is cleared up.
You can see the fumes coming out of there.
Turn it up, so to speak. The glass is cooking the bottom of the top.
We'll watch a little bit of the blowers and then
Very quick jump, and once you get a piece of glass, that is it. Because there's the wrong amount, whether we try to do it, the whole item will end up wrong, even though it is the right shape. First piece is really good. On the shot, to check the weight, see how thick the rolls are. I would say rolling, I would say that's the hardest to learn. And you might learn to do it real quick, but maybe the other fellow will never learn. Bring it up slow. And as it fills up, you just start harder all the time. You can tell right away when it's filled. You blow too hard, you just be sticks all over. It's what they call motor mark. When I was learning my trade, I wasn't doing this when I quit. I could,
they all look like they're really hot and sweaty.
Every item we manufacture has a top. This is the part that's against the pipe. So we then must, as we call it, crack off the top to the right height. We do this by putting a score, a little scratch on the item, desired height.
I have been working, I started about around 32 years ago working here. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, and you have to have really some talent to do this kind of work. You have to get accuracy and speed too, to keep up and keep your patterns locked up and keep the cutters all in work.
That's the painting. All right, so thoughts after we've now put some eyes onto it. Okay, yeah, I mean, that was the 70s. I'm guessing, I'm hoping things have improved a little bit since then. But any other exposures or sources of exposures?
When they were sanding, nobody experienced
Or yeah, grinding, yeah.
Only the guy in the mixing room had a respirator on, and everybody else was like, I'm gonna shovel this shit right in here.
Okay, yeah.
Just drop a whole
Yeah.
bit.
They took the tube, and that guy that was sorting it, just
Yep. Yep.
got the blast blower, the guy that was right up the blast blower, was throwing the blast into the oven. All everything came out, rocking the t-shirt.
Yeah.
No eye protection.
Okay. Good. So let me get some light in here. So it definitely helps to see it, right? You can get a better sense of what's going on and where maybe we need to look. So the evaluation piece is sampling. So we take some samples to get some numbers and quantify their exposures. That's our goal whenever we want to evaluate. And this is part of what could help or hurt the company. And we have to be objective. But go in and measure the silica exposures for these people we think might be exposed the most, or for the job titles of those people who are, suing, to see, is it even possible to develop silicosis from the types of exposures that they've got, given their engineering controls, given their work practices, what are they exposed to? And there's only, if we're a consultant, we probably gave this company a bid, and we probably tried to bid as high as we possibly could while still being lower than everyone else, right? That's what you do when you're a consultant and your bidding is, you want to get your money's worth, but you want to get the job. So anyway, there's not tons of money to just take as many samples as we want. We've got, maybe we planned for 5 or 10 samples, whatever it is. We have to be selective with the samples we take. We can't just sample everyone. Pick where we think, pick those job tasks, those people where we think there is a problem, where we think we might see something. But we have to weigh several things when we're making that decision. So for example, we looked at those job tasks. Maybe the vacuum guy with the hose, he only does that once a day or something for 20 minutes. Or maybe he does that all day. That's something where we'd have to go and observe to see. Or if we had done this before, then we'd have an idea and know. So those are all things that we've got to consider. So this is, you can discuss this if you like or not with a partner, but I want you to think for just a moment on this question. It's kind of a hypothetical, but suppose that we do some sampling for particulates for Mr. Miller, who's in the mixing room. We send it to the lab, they measure a concentration and they give it back to us. They tell us what they measured. I want you to think about and tell me whether you think this statement is true or false. We know how much respirable particulate to which Mr. Miller was exposed. So think about it and take like 30 seconds and then let me know what you think. And I'll be back in just a second. All right, so what do you guys think? I know that wasn't 30 seconds, but false. Why?
Because know exactly what he inhaled.
Okay, why can you not know exactly what?
Someday maybe he's wearing a respirator, someday maybe not.
Okay, possibly.
Someday
Other
might be some
thoughts?
different things.
Okay,
Unless you have an X-ray machine, maybe.
okay, maybe. I'm not even sure then.
Chest.
You don't know his daily tasks.
You know, his daily job. So, while he may not be exposed to the environment, his travel route can take him through something that wasn't discussed. There's so many factors on the outside. You can never guarantee it. We can give him a hypothetical, 95 percentile, between X, Y, and Z.
Good, good. So there are a lot of uncertainties. There are a lot of uncertainties involved, and we like to give a lot of weight to the numbers that we produce through this process. So we take a sample, send it to the lab, they give us the number back, and we base some big decision off of this number. We can never be 100% sure exactly what his exposure was, or whoever. So when we take the sample, we clip a little cassette close to his face, his breathing zone. We sample throughout the day, but what goes onto the sample isn't exactly what he breathed in, right? I mean, you can't measure exactly what he inhaled. There are also other uncertainties, like with our sampling equipment or with the lab's equipment. They'll say that they can measure it to this certain accuracy, this certain precision, but there is an error, the possibility for errors, and even the analytical methods that the lab uses. So their equipment is worth millions of dollars, and so when you send a sample to them, they make sure they recoup some of their costs, but it can be expensive. But even despite the technologies used in their equipment and the costs, there's still uncertainties. And NIOSH developed the methods used, and there's even uncertainties with those methods. So we like to think that we have all these things figured out, but there's a lot of uncertainty. You got to leave some wiggle room for yourself. So yeah, exposure monitoring is a surrogate for reality. It's the best we can do, but there is a lot of uncertainty. So we're going to skip that. I do want to get to this math. I'll turn on the light, and then we'll wrap up after we do this. So if you would like, please do this with a teammate or someone. So I'll write on this side for this one. So we take 3 samples. Actually, I want to. Well, sorry. We're gonna. I'm not sure why I used acetone for the math, but oh well. You know what? Let's use these numbers from here, but with the equation that I have on the next slide. So 0.82 and 0.04 milligrams per cubic meter. Now, in your lab reports, if you are giving me numbers that have units associated with them, please put them on there. I'm not as much of a stickler on that as some. But I had a professor who said, if you give me a number with no units, then it's nothing to me. It means nothing to me. It's good practice to always include the units. Then you know what you're talking about. Or, if you're doing your own work, you can keep track of it. But let's say, now this isn't always what you do in practice, but just for this practice problem, let's say you took this sample for 2 hours. This sample was 4 hours long. And this one was also 2 hours long. On the same person. Let's say this is Mr. Miller in the mixing room. Okay. We want something that we can compare. So we're not going to get to some of this we'll cover next time just because it's important. Some of the things that we won't get to today, but we'll at least cover the math.
So you think all of these from Mr. Miller, just one person?
All of these are from Mr. Miller, but let's say, let's say he was doing different things. This was task 1, task 2, task 3. That might be a scenario where we take different samples because we want to know, hey, what is it for each of these tasks? But if we want to compare his exposure to standards from OSHA or whoever, we need to compare apples to apples. And the standards are all designed as an 8-hour time-weighted average. So we need to get our exposure concentration into an 8-hour time-weighted average, just like the standards. Otherwise, we can compare these numbers to the numbers that OSHA or NIOSH or ACGIH give us, but it's not a fair comparison. It doesn't mean anything until we do. So we've got to time weight these and get an average number for them all. We can't just add them up and divide by 3. That would be an arithmetic average. We need a time weighted because this one should have more weight because it was longer, right? So it's going to be weighted more heavily than the others. So to do that, see if all my colors are working. Well, let's look at the equation on here. Hopefully what I write on here will be easier to understand there. This is not very wiped off very good. We've got concentration 1 times, so multiplied by the time 1 plus, so in this case, we're going to have 3. I'm going to, dang it, I didn't leave myself enough space, but 2 times the time 2 plus concentration 3 times the time 3. And all of that is then divided by our times added together. Time 1 plus time 2 plus time 3. Okay. Apologize for this. So this would all be in one, should all be in one in between these two brackets. So C1 T1 plus C2 T2 plus C3 T3 divided by the sum of all the times. Now this one is easy. What is that going to be if we add the times up? 8 hours. So we know on the bottom we're going to have 8 hours. I want you to work out the top. So the numerator there. What is that? And then figure out what our time weighted average is for the entire concentration. Sorry, what did you get? 3.38. 3.38? Because I called an audible. I haven't done it myself. So it's so this is multiply.
So I have it slow down.
So
3.26.
3.26. Others that either agree or are different. 3.26. We have a second, or is there a third? And then we'll go with it. Okay. Let's let me do it real. Let's do it together on the board here. Okay. So we've got 0.01 times, let me give myself enough room, not make the same mistake here. 0.01 times 2 plus 0.82 times 2 plus 0.04 times 4, and all that's going to be over 8. So that term becomes 0.02, right? This is going to be 1.64 and 0.16. Divide that by 8. So help me out here. What is this? Let's see, that's 1.8. Sorry?
0.2275. Is the whole
Point,
thing.
the whole thing?
Yep.
This? Well, it's got to be.
Everything divided by 8.
Oh,
Yeah.
1.82. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. Divided by 8. 0.2275. Okay. Okay. So, and then, I mean, part of that might be my, it's not super clear, maybe to you guys, how I wrote that. So just remember, it's the product of these two plus the product of these two plus the product of those two divided by the total time. So in this case, we get 0.2275. The same. Yeah, I'm talking about, using units. Milligrams per cubic meter. We'll talk more about concentrations next time. So does anyone have this already, or could someone pull up the NIOSH Pocket Guide on their phone, or just Google it? So I wanted someone. Yeah, go for it. Huh?
The book.
Oh, yeah. So someone just Google OSHA respirable silica PEL, PEL, and tell us what it says. So this is the new PEL. I mean, it's been a year or two. Yeah, no problem. Now it's been about a year since it's been implemented, but it's a lot. Okay, so a lot of the math we're going to do is just unit conversion. So remember, we got to compare apples to apples. We can't compare. So the PEL is 50 micrograms. Whoops. Per cubic meter. This is a G. And
Can you rewrite that?
yeah, micrograms per cubic meter. What's the difference between millimeter or milligram and microgram? So it's 1,000. Which one can you fit 1,000 into the other? Yes, so 1,000 micrograms fits into 1 milligram, and 1,000, not to make it too confusing, 1,000 milligrams will fit into 1 gram, right? You take one gram equals 1,000 milligrams, and 1 milligram equals 1,000 micrograms. Okay, so we need to convert. So we're at, oh boy, these are like pre-updated PEL numbers here. We're way over. So we have 0.2275 milligrams. I mean, what's the quick and dirty way to convert this? So yeah, we just move that over 3 spots. I'll do it the long way as well. 227.5 micrograms per cubic meter. So we've exceeded the PEL by a lot. Let's see, almost 5 times. The long way, I guess I'll do it right here. This is so I do it this way. I forgot, I think I had learned this in inorganic chemistry. It's probably where I picked it up, or my physics classes, but this is the way I like to lay it out if I'm doing something a little bit more in depth and I want to keep track of my units. So I have 0.22, not 7 yet, 7.5 micrograms. I don't have enough room to do a huge thing, but per cubic meter. And I want it in micrograms. So I know from, I don't know, whatever class you learned that in, that 1,000 micrograms fits into 1 milligram. I want my milligrams, I want this to cancel out, and I just want to have micrograms at the end, right? So I need to set this up so milligrams cancels out, and I just have micrograms. So I'm going to put micrograms on the top, and I'm going to put milligrams on the bottom. So I know, okay, these are going to cancel out. And I remember, yeah, 1,000 micrograms fits into 1 milligram. So now, well, that's all I need. These cancel out, and I'm just going to end up with micrograms per cubic meter. And anything, I multiply across the top row, and I multiply across the bottom row. So it's just 1, so nothing's going to happen there. So I just multiply 1,000 by that number, and I know, that I can do the quick and dirty and just move it 3 over. But anyway, that's how I set it up when I like to keep track. Just make sure audio's analytical. Okay. Oh, unit conversion. Yeah, unit conversion. Right. This helps me when I have if I'm just doing the conversion we did, I don't do this personally because I know, okay, it's just a single conversion. If you have, and you will have times where you're doing multiple conversions. When you have multiple conversions, then I would recommend setting it up some way like this, somehow, so you can keep track of your units. So we're going to be done for today. We will cover PELs and RELs and stuff next time. We were so close, dang it. Yeah, I know. No. Yeah, so we'll cover the rest next time. So remember, next week, don't come. It's Martin Luther King Day.
Next week?
Yeah.
Next week, yeah.
I think it's next week, right? Next week. So don't come next week. By the following, so 2 weeks from now, there's the calibration reading quiz that will be due. So that should be available tomorrow. Should open up tomorrow. Calibration reading quiz. There's maybe a little bit of reading and some video. It's one of the few where I don't have a case study. I don't have a calibration case study for you, but that.
And then what else?
And you'll also see an assignment so it's actually the Saturday before. So I want you to do the quiz the Saturday before the Monday when we have class. I also want you to tell me which pill you want to take in terms of your course project. Do you want to present a poster at the Health and Safety Summit, or do you want to, huh? We'll see exactly. I see. If you do the poster, if you do the poster, you don't need to come on April 29th. I'll say that. Okay. Yeah, that would be true. And that's it. Any questions? I'll have an assignment on Canvas for you to just go in and maybe it'll just say red pill, blue pill. No. Say something like that. I will also give you a better sense, give you access to and a better sense of the data sets. And excuse me, your options. Just because for those who are presenting a poster, they'll need to get the jump on that soon. So that should be open tomorrow. Should be available tomorrow. And it's due the Saturday before the 20.
Oh, right.
Dang it. The 26th. It'll be due the 26th.
The calibration test.
The reading quiz and your choice, red pill, blue pill. What do you want to do?
So the test, we will read is all in the canvas, right? Whatever the reading material will be, and then we'll take the test.
Yes.
We do on canvas, and then just like turn it in. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so
Yeah, just
the quiz is all in Canvas.
Right.
The for you to select will also be on Canvas.
Okay.
It's in Canvas.
The reading for that is on Canvas, not in our book, or is it in our book?
Yeah, so the stuff you actually read will all be on Canvas. The book is a reference. I think it will be a helpful reference for you, but most books I treat as a reference rather than something for you to actually, actively read through.
Okay. So it will be due on not this Saturday, but next Saturday.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, just real quick.
Yeah.
Actually.
What employee, sir? Oh, okay. Okay.
And they're paying me to be out here.
Okay.
That being said, I'm a MSF investigator for them, so I'm kind of on call. There's only a couple people in the office that are qualified to do that work. So there is a small risk that if we have a mishap while I'm here, that I have to roll out and provide support for it. So I know in the syllabus and stuff, there was like room for exceptions and stuff. We can't predict when that stuff's gonna happen. And, if it's a bad time, I'm trying to work it out with the people back at work so that if something is going on, that they can send them versus sending me. But I just wanted to let you know there is a risk that I get pulled out in the middle of the semester.
That's fine. Just let me know when you can that you're going to be gone. And so a key thing for you will be to make sure that you have a good relationship with your group. I want to have groups of 3. So hopefully there should be 2 other people from your group that are here during labs. So they'll see what went on and get the data, and then you can meet up with them and kind of catch up.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a heads
Oh,
up.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.